Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're going to learn the mimer from 40 years ago. In the time of Shavuos, there were actually 3 mamorim, 2 directly connected to Shavuos, and 1 connected, of course, also, but in a different way. First mimer is Bishaah Shehikdimu, that's what we're going to do now. And 40 years ago, Erev Shavuos was Shabbos. So Shavuos began on Motzei Shabbos. This year it's going to be on Sunday night. The Rebbe had a custom to bring the night before Shavuos. In the later years, from the 1970s, he used to say a mimer on Shavuos, the first night of Shavuos, after he finished the meal in the apartment, the residence of his Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, after Tikkun Lo Shavuos at about 3 o'clock in the morning. That custom stopped, but then the custom of bringing the night before began. Here, it wasn't the night before Shavuos, it was 2 nights before Shavuos. This Fabrengen, and the Rebbe began the Fabrengen with a mimer. You could actually hear the mimer. It's available, Chabad.org, etc. We'll also do the mimer of Sfartim Lachem, which was the mimer of Erev Shavuos itself, Shabbos afternoon. And then the second day of Shavuos, the Rebbe said the mimer of Tzena or Re'ena. So, Bishaah Shehikdimu is a quite classic mimer. And each mimer, of course, has different nuances and different explanations and different pointers. So let's begin. Bishaah Shehikdimu Yisrael Nasa L'Nishma Bo Shishim Riwi Shamalach Esharis L'Chol Echad Ve'echad M'Yisrael V'Kosher L'Shnik Zorim Echad Kineged Nasa Ve'echad Kineged Nishma. This is, of course, the Gemara describing the giving of the Torah, and it says when the Israelites preceded the statement that they will heed and do the Torah, and they said that they'll do that before they will hear what it's about and hear its details. That's the Nasa we will do before Nishma we will hear. So 600,000 angels of service came to each and every individual Israelite and tied 2 crowns on their heads, one corresponding to the fact that they said we will do, and one corresponding to we will hear. We know the particular lessons learned from the specifics of the way this passage is, and we find this in the Mamorim, the discourses of our Rabbeim, our leaders, which are connected to Chag, the festival of Shavuos. Beginning from the Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe and the subsequent Rabbeim. Just shopkeeping here for a moment. We're using the newer version of the mimer, which is in the Sefer HaMamorim Teres Menachem, Sefer HaMamorim Moedim Shavuos, and it's also in the Teres Menachem of the Hisvaduyas, or Sefer HaMamorim Tavshim Mem Hey. It's of course the same mimer, but there's a few subtle differences. Also, I don't know if we're going to have to say, you could already say take out the yellow markers, the highlighter, because we already said Kol Echad Ve'echad M'Yisrael. It's already in the mimer Chazal, each and every individual. But later in the mimer, it goes from being explicit to implicit. Here, when the Rebbe said the mimer, he speaks about everyone, lesson for everybody. So, that all being said, let's try to get some energy here. So, all of the Mamorim, all the Rabbeim, Adel Mimer Sidirim Shnas Tovshin Tes, up until the mimer of the Rebbe's Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, in 1949, 5709. Shemitchilas mimer hagemora edis hamayla shekdimu nasa l'nishma mashma v'kshiris haksharim hoiso v'shvil adomus nasa l'nishma v'ilu siyum hamaymer hu shekosh l'hem beis ksorim echad kineged nasa v'echad kineged nishma. So the simple question here is, that the reason why they got crowns is because they proceeded to say that they will do before they said we want to know what it's all about. And then, so that's what got them the prize, so to speak. And then, what did they get the two crowns? They got two crowns. They should have gotten one crown for that, right? Just because they said that first, but instead, angels came and gave them a crown. One for we will do, and one for we will hear. Just to translate it literally here, like from the beginning of the passage in the Talmud regarding the advantage that they preceded Nasa, we will do before we will hear. From that, it's understood that the angels tying the crowns on them was a reward for this, for the fact that they preceded Nasa to Nishma. And at the end of the passage, it comes out that they tied the crowns, two crowns, one for Nasa, one for Nishma. So then it's not seemingly because they preceded it, but merely because they said it. We will do and we will hear. So for each one of them, we got a crown. If it would just be because they preceded this, that they will do before they will hear, they should only get one crown for that, one prize. Why did they get two? And then if that's the case, they should get a third crown. They should get one for Nasa, one for Nishma, one for preceding Nasa to Nishma. Voidig was after the Huvah, even though it's not brought explicitly in the Mamorim, the Rebbe says, according to this, if it's not enough to have one crown, can I get Hagdama, Nasa, and Nishma? Get two crowns on their individual crowns. One for Nasa, one for Nishma. Why wasn't there a third crown? Can I get Akdomas Nasa Nishma? For the fact that they preceded Nasa to Nishma. It's its own thing, its own special thing. On the contrary, it's something very great. It's a greater advantage. And we understand this from the way the Talmud says that when did this happen? The angels got excited and gave them this crown when they proceeded to say that we're going to do it right away before we even know what it's about. Not from the fact that they said they're going to do it in here, but that they said Nasa before Nishma. And there are also several other things that we could learn out from the specifics of this passage. The crux of the explanation is like it's explained in the Mamorim of all the Rebbeim through the Rebbe's Rebbe, through the Rebbe, the Nasi of our generation. Hine close inin amirazu shoyse koydem hayim de matan toira shari matan toira hayrak b'shisha b'sivim v'ila amirazu hayso b'chamisha b'sivim who close inin a kabbalah sale. This whole idea that they said first we'll do and then we'll know what it's about, that's just generally speaking the idea of kabbalah sale, accepting the yoke of heaven, accepting, doing whether you understand, whether you don't understand. It's a very important fundamental principle in our service to God. We don't have to wait till we understand, till we feel good about it, till we're comfortable, but we have to do what we have to do. That's a fundamental principle. So, again, just translating, that the general idea of what they said, of what this teaches us, this happened before the Torah was given. Because the Torah was given on the 6th or the 7th of Sivan. There's a discussion in the Gemara about that. There it says that it's certainly on Shabbos, but it was a question if it was the 6th of Sivan, the 7th. You have to see the Gemara on Shabbos, page 86. But they said Nasa before Nishma on the 5th of Sivan. The day, certainly a day, maybe 2 days before they got the Torah. So this is the idea of accepting the yoke. That means it was a prerequisite. It preceded getting the Torah. They accepted. They had Kabbalah soil. It was before the Torah was given. Shabo gam bizman yoim miyuchat chamisha b'sivim. It also came at its own specific time that also made the day special, the 5th day of Sivan. So regarding Kabbalah soil, the accepting of the yoke of heaven, we find something similar to preceding Naaseh that we will do before Nishma, like the Mamonim explain, and that is that which it says, Mashakosu Mishnah Masechtas Brachos B'Tchilosa. It says in the Mishnah, and it's in the beginning of the Masechta and Gemara of Brachos. Loma Kod Mishma L'B'Hoyim Shemoya. Why do we precede the paragraph of Shema when we recite the Shema to the second paragraph of V'Hoyim Shemoya? So hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. We learned about that in the last mimer, previous mimer. Why does that go before V'Hoyim Shemoya? It will be when you hear and then we get the reward, etc. So the Mishnah says, Kadeshi Kabbalah El Malchus Shemaim Tchila, so that one accepts upon himself the yoke and the burden of the kingdom of heaven first. Shazeu Inyona Shel Parsha Deshena. That's what it's all. That's what the first passage, the first paragraph is all about. That. And afterwards, one accepts upon oneself the burden and the yoke of the mitzvahs. Burden is a tough word, but we're using that as the yoke, doing that part of mitzvahs because it is God's commandment, and not for any other reason. And this is the idea, and the Rebbe will quote this here, after the Rebbe talks about this in Tanya, and the idea of Kabbalah Soil, how important it is. So that's Pasha Shnia. That's the second passage of Shema. For that matter, the Rebbe says, the third paragraph is also included, Parshas Tzitzis, the paragraph that speaks about the Tzitzis, and of course the Exodus from Egypt. The Rebbe doesn't say it here, but the Rebbe points out here, usually that's how we refer to it. That's the portion that discusses the Exodus. But here the Rebbe points out something because it's going to, I believe it's because it is on the point of this mimer, the performance of mitzvahs. And the Rebbe says that here it has the portion of tzitzis. Sheshkula, can I get called mitzvahs? Tzitzis is compared to all of the mitzvahs. Rashi, like Rashi, there in Parsha Shlach, where we have the mitzvah of tzitzis, Shalminim Gematria Shel Tzitzis Sheish Meis. If you add up the numerical value of the word tzitzis, you'll get to 600, and then the 8 strands, the 8 strings, and the 5 knots is 8 plus 5 is 13, so you have 613. Harei Taryag, there are 613 mitzvahs. And like the Medrash says in Mechilta, that's also how it went down, that's how it was at the giving of the Torah. God said, accept upon yourself my sovereignty, my kingdom, my monarchy. This is accepting upon oneself his kingdom, may he be blessed. And then I will make the decrees, I will decree the decrees for you. Shem Pratei Mitzvahs, that's a reference to the details of the mitzvahs and the detailed mitzvahs. V'gam kan yeshnam gimel inyonim. Here we also have these 3 things, these 3 ideas, these 3 nuances. Number 1, the preceding, and number 2, the 2 items, the doing and the learning about it. The dugmas gimel inyonim, the nasa v'nishma, domas nashel nishma. Just like they said, we will do, we will hear. And it was preceding, they proceeded, we will do to we will hear. Here we have the 3 things that Rebbe enumerates, Kabbalah Seil, Malchus Shemayim, accepting the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, Kabbalah Seil Mitzvahs, accepting the yoke of mitzvahs, Kabbalah Seil Malchus Shemayim, Kabbalah Seil Mitzvahs, and then the fact that we accept upon ourselves first the yoke of heaven and the kingdom of heaven before the yoke of the mitzvahs itself. שמודגשת בכך שקבול עושה מלך שמיים היא בפרשת השנה. This is stressed, and this is we see this by the fact that the accepting the yoke of heaven is in the first passage, paragraph of Shema, also mitzvahs, even Pasha Shnia. And accepting the yoke of the mitzvahs is in the second passage of Shema. And then there's two more things that we can learn specifically in this order. The fact that that the Shema comes before the Vohim Shemoya, the kingdom of heaven before the mitzvahs. V'habeis, and here the Rebbe points out, this is the idea of the preceding it, that we call the portion of Shema the first passage, the first paragraph. Shema nikras parsha l'shena. So we stress that this is the first thing, first and foremost. And then the way the mitzvahs will be, the details, is the second paragraph. And here's the explanation. We say we're going to do it, that's accepting the yoke of heaven. You don't know any details. Just say, God says, you're going to do it, we're going to do it. We don't even know yet what. We're going to do it. Even the idea of hearing, as it's explained here, it's also to find out the details of how we're going to do it, just to find out how. It's also a sense of Kabbalah soil, of accepting the yoke. But it's accepting the yoke of the detailed mitzvahs. And the general idea of we will do and we will hear, which is the idea of accepting the yoke and doing it, just getting it done. It is fundamental in fulfilling the mitzvahs. And that's why we see something interesting when we say the blessing before all the mitzvahs, for the mitzvahs that we say the blessing on, even though every mitzvah has something different, right? There's tying tefillin, there's blowing the shofar, there's shaking the lulav, there's covering up the blood of fowl with dust, and there's separating challah, and there's lighting a Shabbos candle. Everything is a different activity. It's a different thing being done, right? But nevertheless, the beginning of all those blessings are all the same. The first part, the first more than half of the bracha is the same. So, each mitzvah has a different details, different intent and kavanas, different secrets, meanings, and what it has in it. But nevertheless, there is a part of the bracha of the mitzvahs which is equal in all the mitzvahs. So in the blessing of all the mitzvahs we say, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us, since they are his commandments, and not only are they his commandments, but God, the Holy One, blessed be He, commanded us to do them. That brings about, going backwards in the blessing, that the sanctity that He sanctified us with. The fact that He has the commandments and He commanded us to do these commandments. That's the idea that we'll do it. Well, and then you come to the details. This is the idea of learning the details. That's the end of the way the blessing is set forth. It's different. You say the end of the mitzvah, the end of the blessing is different on every mitzvah, whether it's redeeming the firstborn son, shaking the lulav, performing a bris, whatever mitzvah may be, or getting rid of your chametz, etc., etc. Uklo, in the Kabbalah sel mitzvahs, who shall yod nasa kiyum mitzvahs b'ofen shel oil. Now, this whole idea of accepting the yoke of mitzvahs means that through this Kabbalah oil, you turn the mitzvah into this yoke, this burden, this idea that we're doing it because God said so. And part of it is, let's say one enjoys the mitzvah, let's say someone understands the mitzvah, it's all terrific, but we still have to do it because it's God's mitzvah, because God said so. And therefore it's not so pertinent how much the person understands or grasps the idea of the mitzvah, the reason for the mitzvah, etc. Because he's already submissive, he's already bottled, he's already subservient, like a servant before his master. Because that's how the performance of mitzvah has to be. Because he sanctified us with his commandments and he commanded us. And like Chassidic explains, that this is to be submissive to the will of God, the subservience to what God wants done. Now, later we're going to learn in the Maimer, there's a deeper sense to being now totally submissive to God himself, in the bigger picture. First, we are submitting to the mitzvah itself, to the commandments, and to perform the mitzvah. That's because since he commanded us, he is therefore submissive and subservient to the will that is in this commandment. But now yet, since this subservience is to the command, even though a person is already submissive, but still it's not the ultimate of submission and subservience, because he has a connection to some type of definition and dimension, according to the mitzvah that was commanded. Even though he is submissive and subservient to all the commandments and all the mitzvahs, but since the blessing is on a certain mitzvah, the accepting the yoke is also in relation to this mitzvah and its details and what it has to be done. Therefore, there's a different amount of submission and subservience in each and every one, because each mitzvah is different. And this would be in relation to what the will of God is for this particular mitzvah. So that is like I'm close to the Yachas Kiyam Mitzvah. Yes, was I spoke fail Shir Babitl. The Heskel Rotzen Prati Zeh. The Hainu Shalafi Achilukim Be'ini Harotzen. Therefore, the differences between the will of God. Nasashini Gam Kabbalah Seil V'Habitl Rotzen. Therefore, there's a difference in how the acceptance of the yoke will be and the submission to this will be. Now you might come up with a good question. Yes, that I've asked the question. If it's performing the will of God, so then just his will, just do. So the details shouldn't matter, right? What do we say? The devil's in the details. The nitty-gritty. But the Rebbe says yes, because because you're talking about a specific mitzvah, so therefore there will be a difference at this level of submission. There is, of course, a greater submission that's higher than this, which we're going to get to. So he says, so even though we would think there is no difference when it's talking about will, also we know that the will is a higher function within the person. It's higher than the detailed feelings and intellectual attributes and emotional attributes. It's what you want, and therefore your pleasure also is higher.